Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I'm going to show off Garcia. And to show you how she really works, you have to stack her acceleration rotation buff, which takes at least 6 turns. So this is already more than 6 turns into a fight, so I can show how this works. Once I show you, her damage potential, I'm actually going to put the exact same gear that she has onto Cole and see how much damage Cole does to give you a good, a good example of the damage potential and how good Garcia really could be with the right setup. So before we do anything else, let's just look at the numbers a bit and see how this goes. So Garcia has now put the defense debuff on this boss, and to increase this defense debuff, I'm also going to use Warhorn, which will make him take a lot more damage. So just to make sure that we are looking at the same things, with Garcia and Cole, we can see that the boss has 541 defense, right? It's been debuffed a lot. These are the debuffs that he has on him. And with that, let's take a look to see how much damage Garcia can do. So you can see that, with the execution time skill, she can do 7,097 damage. This actually goes up even more if I use this skill, the Taste of Blood skill, which is going to give her potential burst, which increases her attack even more. So once I have that, and this goes, now she can do 8,247, 8,274 damage. With a crit, that would be over 10k. I hope I get a crit. Let's see. Yes, it's a crit. So 10,756 damage. Now that is 10% of the boss's health, right? With just one attack, she was able to do that. So basically, in 10 turns, 10 attacks like that, she's able to defeat this level 65 boss, which is the highest boss we have right now. Of course, you need to have the correct setup. You have to use Warhorn and so on and so on. But this is just a 2 energy skill. There are other skills that does. Sorry, that's not the skill. This one. It's just a 2 energy skill. There are other skills that might do a similar damage multiplier. I've seen skills that does like 180% damage, but they usually cost 4 energy. This is only 2 energy, and it does so much damage. If I can time this right, I can also use Princess Prayer on her to have her, do the skill twice. So in one turn, she can do 20,000 damage to this boss. So actually, I don't even know. Let me just see. So if I stand by with Cole, yeah, so she can. It doesn't. Okay, she doesn't have the. she doesn't have enough energy to do that. But you can see, with the setup, that she can easily do more than 20,000 damage to this boss, right? So now I'm gonna put the exact same gear on Cole to see how much damage Cole can do with the exact same setup. And I mean, spoiler alert, Cole does a lot less. But let's see exactly how less. So Cole is going to have the same equipment. Once I do this damage test, I'll then talk a little bit more about Garcia's skills and how I think she is. So there we go. So Cole gets this perfect assassin buff. Garcia was getting the similar buff from him with the fortitude buff. Okay, so let's start this off. Okay, everything else doesn't matter, so I'm just trying to do a very quick exercise here. So leave him here. I'm going to do it on the next turn. Okay. Oh geez, okay, that didn't work at all. Okay, so let me just make sure everyone survives so that we don't end up with that. So he's going to use that. Going to use this. Okay, sorry, bear with me for a second as I get this set up. Okay, so now I can do that. So she is going to cast this skill. And before I attack, I will double check the defense to make sure it's the exact same defense that this boss is having before Cole attacks. Okay, so this boss has 541 defense again, and we can see with Cole's skill, the 2 energy skill, it does 4,356 damage. It's a lot less than the 7,000 damage that Garcia does. So if Cole gets a crit, he is probably, sorry, I keep saying he for Cole, but it's actually a girl. Cole is a girl, so she. If she gets a crit, she's probably going to do, I think, about 6,300 damage it came up to. I mean, if you get a crit now, we can see. Get 2,100 times 3. So she will basically be doing, as I said, 6,300 damage with crit hits. So this is a lot less than Garcia's 10k per crit with the same 2 energy skill, right? So I hope that gives you an idea of how you can use Garcia. Now Garcia, the main complaint I've heard about Garcia is that the way that her trait and skills work is that it takes a while for her to ramp up the acceleration buff that she gets. So she's really, really good after 6 turns. And that's just a base Garcia. You don't have any extra stars on her or anything. But a base Garcia, her buff ramps up after the 6th turn. And in most fights that you're fighting other units, enemies, by the 6th turn, the fight is almost done. Like, especially in like PvP or something, by 6 turns, the fight is more than done. So the main complaint that I hear about Garcia is that while she can do a lot of damage, by the time she's able to make an impact in the fights, the fight is already done. And while that might be true in PvP and a lot of other other like the Fool's Journey and stuff like that, that is not true for boss fights. Boss fights, I mean, last a lot longer. This fight usually lasts like 15 or 16 turns for me right now when I'm fighting the level 65 boss. And if she's able to ramp up by 6 turns, as you can see, like she can do a significant amount of damage for only 2 energy. And you can chain that skill with Princess's Act Again, and she can do 20k damage in a turn. No other character right now is able to do that with very similar gear. So let me put the gears that I had on her again and talk about her a little bit. So I kind of want this to be like a full review. So I wanted to start with showcase of how her skills are. And then I wanted to go in and talk a little bit about her trait and everything else. So she has a very unique buff called Rotational Acceleration, which basically increases her attack and defense by 4% for each stack. It can go up to 6 stacks. At 3 stars, it can go up to 9 stacks. And then as the star level increases, she's also able to get other buffs. Like right now at the 2nd star, I mean, I got her twice when I was trying to get, I think it's Nungal the Archer. I don't know how to say her name. But I was trying to get her, and I got two copies of her. I thought I would build her and try it out, and she exceeded my expectation. So anyway, at 1 star, she gets 15% crit. At 2 stars, it goes up to 30%. And at the 2nd star is when she's able to start getting stacks of rotational acceleration. So at 1 star, she's not actually that great, because the only way you can build her acceleration stacks is to defeat enemies. But the good news is that you only need 20 shards to get her to 2 stars. That is very easily farmable in like a week, right? Because you can get 3 shards a day. So in 7 days, you can get 21 shards. So she is easily able to go to the 2nd star in just 1 week. At the 3rd star, I think she actually gets quite a significant bump, because she can have up to 9 stacks. So her maximum damage output actually increases even more. And at the 6th star, she gets 15% crit damage as well. So between the 1st star and the 3rd star, she actually has a huge boost. And at the 5th star, she gets an even bigger boost, right? But I think the 5th star will take quite a bit of time to get to. And I think it's not. I think most people, by the time she's able to get to 5th star, will probably have better options. So I'm not going to go into that right now. I'm just going to keep it at the 3rd star level. And we're going to look at her skills. Now, one of the reasons I took this reaction off, is because for the boss fight that we just did, the Weaponry Trial 2, this reaction can sometimes count as a range skill. and that would trigger, the ranged attack back from the boss, and I don't want that. That's the reason why I took it off. But let's start with her skills. At rank 1, I believe this is the best skill that she has, the lock-on skill, which decreases, she's usually good, like really, really good in boss fights. So this is going to decrease the boss's defense by 40%. And this is every single turn. You don't have to cast a skill. This is a passive skill. So I think it's really, really good. The second skill, Battle Fever, I mean, it could be good. Like if you find that she's dying a lot, it helps her to tank a bit better. But her role really is, a damage dealer, and then secondary can do some utility. I think there'll be very niche cases where Battle Fever might be optimal. For the rank 3 skill, I really like this one, the Taste of Blood, because it can dispel debuffs. And there are stages where you start stacking debuffs, so you remove 3 at once. It gives you a little bit of health, and the most important part of this is the potential burst skill, which increases her attack by 20%. And also increases her defense as well. But that attack part, she's doing as much damage as she can, and right before you have a big turn, like you use Warhorn, and then you're using her execution time skill twice because you're using the act again from Princess. Is it Princess Iana? So with that, if you're using this right before you do that, you can have a lot of damage. Like you saw that her attack went from 7,000 something to 8,200 by using the skill, right? So this is, if you're going to do a damage dealer build to tackle boss fights, I think this is the skill that you want to have. She actually has 2 different hook skills, the hook shot, which other assassins have as well, and then the spinning blade. Both of them drag enemies towards you. This one costs turn time, so you can only do it once every 4 turns. Whereas this one you can do, it costs 3 energy to cast. Both of them are instant skills, so after you do that, you can also attack, or you can pull them and then run away if you want to. So I think this is actually this is the secondary utility that she has. It can be useful in some stages, where if you're fighting a group of enemies and you want to pick them off one at a time, this is the way to do it. So you can also bring assassins as well, but she can also do some damage and do that. Whereas the assassins, I mean, I guess you could build them for damage as well, but she has more things that she can do, right? Yeah, so those are her hook skills, and then for her reaction, I mean, this is just a generic counterattack, but this one I think is really good because it'll help you to kill off enemies that have a little bit of health that are within 3 cross tiles of her. So it's a more of a unique skill for her, and it basically is like a finisher. Like she's trying to finish off enemies, right? That's her whole gimmick, with execution time, and then with the fatal reaping reaction. So here you have the choice of Lone Ranger and Spinning Blade. I think Lone Ranger, especially for boss fights, it's going to be very limited use that you can have of her, because you have to make sure that none of your allies are within 2 squares of her, and it's usually hard to find locations that you can plant her without allies nearby. So for the sake of boss fights, where I think she excels at, I think this is going to be a really hard skill to bring along, unless you're at a stage where you're using her and other ranged attackers or something. But most of the time, you're not going to really be able to bring this. And this is also not that great for boss fights. It might potentially have some use in the 3rd weaponry trial, where you're trying to pull those minions that the boss spawns to be closer to you. So maybe it has some potential. But both of these skills are really not that great for boss fights, so it's a limited use that you can bring either of them. Her basic attack, for boss fights, I think this one is good because it increases her crit chance by an extra 25%. For boss fights, passive skills, you can't really negate the passive skills of bosses anyway, right? Because usually they're immune to that. And then for the rank 11, both these skills are situational. Again, for boss fights, I don't think this works on boss fights often. I mean, they don't really benefit from aura buffs anyways, right? And again, for boss fights, the minus dodge doesn't really work. So this could work in secondary situations where you need a little bit of utility to negate either of negate aura buffs from enemies, or you're fighting enemies that have dodge buffs. So that is potentially, some potential situations you can use it in. And this one is an AoE damage. She also gets extra crit from it. Again, it's not very useful for boss fights. This could have some potential uses where you're trying to fight groups of enemies, but I think it's very, very situational. So I think most of the time, the build that I have on right now is probably what you're going to be using for boss fights. This is going to be her attack. I'm going to bring these 3 skills, which all have, uses. And then reaction. I mean, if as long as you're not fighting weaponry 2, you can use this reaction. Otherwise, you can just go with no reaction. And if you don't know how to do that, you just click this and click unequip. There you go. So that's her. I think I think she's really good for the starting lineup that we have right now. I never played on the Taiwan server. I don't usually play ahead. I kind of like to know a little bit about what's coming, but I don't know it too in depth. And it's really hard to know exactly, how much I like something unless I play with it myself. So I like to do my reviews after I've had a chance to play with them and see them a little bit. So I really like her. With all the characters that I have played with and that I've seen, I think she is the one that has the highest damage potential for bosses. In addition to that, because she's a seeker, she also has move 5, so she's very flexible. You can move her around very easily, and for boss fights where you're taking a lot of time to kill these bosses, she is easily able to ramp up. I think she can use her pretty well in the 3rd weaponry trial as well, because those minions that you will attack and kill, every time you kill one of these minions, with the execution time buff, with the execution time skill, you also increase her rotational acceleration stack as well. So in 3 turns, if you kill those 3, by the end of the 3rd turn, she will already have 6 stacks. So she can already start doing, insane amounts of damage with just 3 turns if you are able to kill off other enemies in those 3 turns with the skill. So you do have to be a little bit conscious of her energy use. But I think, in these situations, and like in boss fights and mostly boss fights, but also situations where you need to pick off enemies, so a little bit of added utility, I think she definitely has like spots on people's teams. Should you pull for her is a different question though, because right now, especially for players that are free to play, the income of these crystals is not that high, and there are a lot of very good banners coming out. So should you pull for her or should you not? If you really like her, if you like her design, I think you should. I've heard a lot of people saying that they really like her design, but they're scared to pull for her because her reviews are bad. I think that if you like her design, you should pull for her, not only because, she looks good, but also because I think she really does have a place on a lot of teams. For the 2nd and 3rd weaponry trial, she does quite a bit of damage. You also are able to benefit from this, defense debuff as well, and it's automatic. So I think, just with the amount of damage she can do and then this debuff, I think that already earns her a place in a lot of weaponry 2 and 3 trials. And then she's also on, she's on the Papal States and the Fortitude teams. The only bad thing about these 2 is that you need to bring a buffer for them, and the buffer for them is not so common. So that's unfortunate, because the buffer for this, so Samantha is a buffer for Papal States, but not a lot of people might have her. I don't know if you pulled for her or if you tried to pull for Dandelion and ended up with her. And then for Fortitude, Magnus, he hasn't even been on a raid up banner. I got him because I was trying to get the debut unit right now, the Archer, and he surprised me, so that's how I got him. But, I would assume not a lot of people have him. So you have to use somebody like this guy, Suppression, who also has the Papal States buff, to be able to give her the buff. So that's, I think, is one of the unfortunate bigger disadvantages of Garcia is that the units that buff her with the fraction wide buff is not readily available. Whereas for other units, there, if you're in Team Ira or something, a lot of people pull for Dandelion, so you have her. So you have him, so you're able to benefit from that. If she is the Union, Gloria, a lot of people pull for Gloria as well, so she's able to benefit from that. But unfortunately, the teams that she's on is not readily available to buff everyone. So I think that's one of the bigger unfortunate negatives that she has. But I think as we play on, more and more people will get these fraction-wide buffers, and I'm sure more units will also be released that also buff, different factions. But yeah, so I think, if you really like her, I think you should pull for her. If you're missing a damage dealer, if you don't have Cole, there are a couple units that are coming out that I've heard are very, very good damage dealers. So if you want to wait for them, you can do that. But if you have her, like I had her, and I didn't build her for like a week because I thought she was not that great, right? But if you have her and you build her, I think she will surprise you with the amount of damage you can do. So that's my verdict on her. I think that, if you already have her, I think you can't go wrong with building her because she already does a lot of damage. But if you're spending the limited amount of resources that you have for her, I mean, you have to kind of commit to which unit you're going to, like, you can only have like a couple of damage dealers because you're not going to have resources to pull everyone, right? So you have to really think about it if you want to get her. Or and also the problem with the summon banner for her is that she's not the only unit. You might also end up getting Nungal. So that's unfortunate. So you might have to just wait to get her by surprise, and whenever you're surprised yourself and you get her, then you can use her. So that's unfortunate, but I mean, I wanted to do a review, and I think she's a really good unit, but I think acquiring her is a different story. So if you happen to have her, if you get lucky with her, maybe at some point when you do get lucky with her, you can come back to this review and take a look. But this is my unbiased review. I think that, for what she does, I think there's a spot on the team for her. Now, if you want to look at my choice of equipment, the reason I like this newborn blade better is because it increases her attack. With this one, it increases the crit rate, but if he already has a high crit rate, if he goes from like say 50 to 56, because I have it at 2-star, that's not as good as giving a flat out increase of 3% of HP added to her attack. I think that's better. This doesn't really benefit her because it's going to be so hard where she's alone and doesn't have anyone in 4 tiles. The only reason I'm using this because I just happen to have it, right? It's basically the same as other stuff that I'm using that is a level 40 trinket. Like, that's what I bought it for. I just brought it for some stats, not really to take advantage of its special effect. I think it's really hard to use the special effect unless it's an assassin that goes around and kills off people one by one, like Cole. She has a lot of crit already built into her kit, so I just want to increase that a little bit more. That's the reason why I brought the Verdict of Justice. If I'm doing Weaponry Trial 3, I would instead probably use the Temptation of the Devil. I would use this card instead. But that is my review on Garcia. I think she's really good, in my opinion, for boss fights. And especially, like right now when people are a bit underleveled and you are trying to beat these bosses in the time frame, I think she can really help out with that. So that's my review on her. If you have any questions, let me know and I will get back to you. That's it for this video. Take care, guys. See you next time.